Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of A Millennial's Guide to Real Estate Investing. Today on the show I have Whitney Sewell. He is a multifamily syndicator. He's done some deals in Dallas, Fort Worth, and now doing some stuff in Colorado. So thanks so much for coming on the show.
My pleasure. Happy to be here.
Absolutely. So tell everybody a little bit more about yourself after my super basic introduction. Tell everybody a little bit more about what you're doing in real estate today.
Yeah. So love real estate. Got into real estate, I guess, in 2009 and got, came back or out of school or out of high school, I should say, joined military, was in military, spent a year in Iraq, came home, tried to figure out what I was going to do, became a police officer, Kentucky State Police. And while I was with them, I found out real quickly that I couldn't make any money being a police officer. So, while I enjoyed it and would have almost done it for free the first couple of years, because I really enjoyed it, the writing was on the wall. There's just, there's no way to make any money doing this. So that's what made me search for something else. And, maybe we'll talk about how I got into real estate specifically in a little bit, but, military, law enforcement background, and then went federal, and then but then started growing real estate in a need to. Our why is a big passion of ours, and is what fuels a lot of our real estate passion and what we're doing right now. I've got an amazing wife who is an amazing just partner in this business, because I couldn't do it without her. I tell everybody, says, how do you get all this done? I say, well, I do the business and she does everything else, and a couple of amazing boys. A third one will be here in just a few weeks. And so that's a little bit about who we are. We're passionate about our just family time and growing this real estate business and helping as well.
Awesome. Love it. And so how did you get into real estate investing? So, you were a police officer, but then what introduced you to real estate to know that was maybe a better direction for you to take?
So ultimately, and I hate to even say this because it's used so much, but that's right.
Yep.
It was something that an advertisement of theirs or something that that triggered me to real estate. I didn't even think about real estate before this much. I didn't even really. I wasn't raised around entrepreneurs. I didn't have that mindset. I didn't even know that was an option. And so when I was open to that, I was already in policing and realizing that okay, we're not going to be able to make much money doing this. And I just got married amongst this time as well, and wanted my wife to be able to stay at home, and we just knew, okay, on this salary, that it's going to be extremely difficult and nearly impossible, and so we got to find something else. So I was exposed to this thing, real estate, and thought, okay, I know, just from studying a little bit, that many people have been extremely successful in this business, and I need to check this out. And so, we pursued some more educational stuff, and pretty quickly bought a couple triplexes in Kentucky, where we were living at the time. And that was a whole education in itself, the hard way. We learned a lot from those two buildings, but that led us down a long road to where we are now.
Okay, cool. And so you bought two triplexes, you said?
Did.
Okay. And then were those close to you, or how far away were those properties from you?
Yeah, they were probably 6 or 8 miles from where we were living
really
at the
close.
time, maybe 10 miles.
Okay, got it. And then how did you find those deals? Was it just stuff on the MLS, or how did you go about finding those first two deals?
Yeah, they were the same property. They were together, but they were through a realtor, that I knew there. It was an off-market property, but we learned a lot from those properties. But we found them through a broker or through a realtor.
And then, do you still own those today?
We do not.
Okay, cool. So that was kind of your first taste then in the real estate, was two triplexes right next to each other. And then how long did you own those for until you realized that it was, that you needed to do something else to scale up? Or what did you learn from those which made you go into the syndicating kind of realm after that?
So a lot happened between that property and syndication. At that time I was so new to real estate. I was so new to this entrepreneurial mindset. Like syndication wasn't even. I never even heard that word, real estate syndicate. Those words together anyway.
Yeah.
And so that property though, I really found out the lack of due diligence that we did, and trusting. I hired a professional inspector to come and check the property, and I followed him around in every nook and cranny and all those things. But something as simple as having somebody that specialized in heat and AC. Like I trusted his ability to, he just pretty much said, yeah, yes, they're blowing hot or cold air at this temperatures, and it didn't really help me to think about like the age of these units, or when they're going to need to be replaced. And while I knew that I probably should plan for some of that, but I didn't know enough about heat and AC to understand that, okay, this is going to be pretty soon.
Got it.
And so, but just dealing with tenants all together, that was a whole nother experience that until you live it, you're not living, right?
Yeah. So you guys were self-managing those?
I was, yes.
Got it.
Self-managing. Yes. So taking all the calls, doing all the showings, all that stuff, it wasn't in the best part of town, and I didn't know this market well enough yet. We bought these actually before we moved there. And so, so anyway, yeah. So anyway, but it was a good learning experience. We moved then when I went federal from Kentucky State Police. We moved to Virginia for that position, sold those buildings then, and thankfully we pretty much broke even. But however, we gained a lot of knowledge and experience. And then in Virginia, I bought and sold a few different properties up to like a 15-unit building. And then I just really realized that it's going to be so hard to scale for me. If I want mini rentals, if I want to be able to replace my income, everybody does that figure, right? Okay, I've got this income. How many single family units at $100 a door is it going to take? And then, okay, if I do 5 year, 10 year, or how long is that going to take?
Yeah.
And so finally I was introduced to syndication and thought, okay, I really like this business model. I really like that I can manage professionals and hire professional management companies and really manage a business that way and scale fast.
So then so you bought and sold, so you did the triplexes, but then you moved, so then you sold those triplexes off.
That's right.
And then when you moved to Virginia, then did you start buying stuff in Virginia, or then did you start looking out of state for those 15-unit buildings that you had done after that?
No, the 15-unit building, it was one complex, was in Virginia as well, pretty close to where I live. And a couple smaller single-family homes, but then the 15-unit building. But like I said, just pretty quickly, I was like, okay, this is going to take a long time, to get somewhere like this. And then I was introduced to syndication.
Okay, got it. And then, so once you were introduced to did you buy the 15-unit with your own cash, or did you do some sort of syndication with that building even?
No, it was not syndicated. It was me and a partner and was seller financing.
Oh, wow. Okay, cool. All right, so you did that. Then we're introduced to the syndicating part. And then what'd your first syndication deal look like, and how did you run the deal, or how did you structure that whole thing? Because there's so many different pieces of the puzzle when you're doing syndication. There's the GP, the person that signs on the loan, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So how did you kind of fit yourself into that syndication umbrella?
That's a great question. I get the question many times a week, how to get started in syndication and what that looks like. But it was partnering with someone else who was much more experienced, and I would recommend anybody to do that in syndication. So even raising capital for the first time, it's really difficult if you have no track record, and not for everybody like yourself, but for a lot of people, it's very difficult. And so when you have somebody else that you can partner with, you can track record, use their experience, and you're not having to build all those systems from scratch for your very first deal, right? And so I helped to raise capital for another, deal sponsor, use their track record, use their experience. And so when investors, ask me about, my experience or, the deals that I've done at that time, well, I'd never syndicated a deal. 15 units was the biggest. And so then I could talk about, his experience, the person I'm partnering with, and really that team, because that's ultimately who they're investing in, at that time, because they're the ones managing the deal. They're the ones that are making this function, and it's their experience of many deals, that makes me comfortable with partnering as well.
Absolutely. And then so you were helping them raise money for their larger projects, then you can get a
That's
piece
right.
of the pie that way. So then how were you going out and, raising money, and how did you, just like you asked me on your show, like, hey, how did you at 23 or 20 years old raise money? How did you, without really doing, I'm assuming it was a large apartment building, like 200 and something units. How big was the first deal that you helped raise money for?
398 units.
398. So how did you, without having that experience yourself, was it just pulling again, using case studies from that bigger syndicator and, presenting those, and then just explaining them and walking through the situation? Or how did you do that without actually investing in such a large deal before?
So that's a great question, and and I find it even surprising. But the way that I was successful initially raising capital was going to real estate conferences and meetups and things like that. And I hear all the time that, oh well, everybody there's looking for investors. Well, guess what? There's lots of investors at those events. And so I traveled to many conferences, and it's costly, right? All over the country. I've gone to many conferences and start building relationships. So I find, meet people there and, talk to them about what I'm looking to do, and, the syndication business and these types of deals. But more than anything, just making a connection. I don't even have to talk about a specific deal, but it's just making a connection. I share my why with them, and a lot of people remember me because of that. And so then when I follow up, the day after we get back and I follow up, or 2 days later, the next week, whatever, they remember who I am usually. And so it's all in the follow up. It's following up, and then, following up again, and them hearing from you again. And even if it's just email, but hopefully even a phone call, eventually. But that's what I want to do. In the first email, when I'm following up, I'm asking them to schedule a call, or that I will call them, just to follow up, see how they're doing, ask about them, and, how I can provide value. And then eventually, guess what? They see that first deal from me. And that we've already built some relationship, and so we get on the phone again and talk about the opportunity, talk about the team, and then it's not so much about me and my track record as much as it is about, we've already got this relationship, and then about this team that I'm partnered with.
Love it. Awesome. Yeah, and I say that a lot too. Like, even if you go to those networking events, yeah, everybody's looking for money, but if you can become friends with all those 200 people in that room, and not try to sell them on anything. I think where people mess up, you didn't say this, but like, I think where people mess up with the raising money part is they go and they have a deal that they're looking to raise money on, and they're, hey, can I get your business card? Hey, I'm a syndicator. I raise money. Hey, blah, blah, blah. Instead of just trying to, like you said, add value up front to those people. So, and you also said something too, which I preach all the time, which is the follow up part. So how did you, let's say you collect a bunch of people from a meetup or something a conference that you go to, how did you systematize the follow up? Because I think that could be something that's very hard for people to keep track of.
Yeah, and it's a great question, because it's something that is done usually by most people, right? Or
Yep.
or if it is, it's halfway done. And I can't say I've always done it well, but we've tried to get a lot better at it. And so initially, I would take somebody's card, obviously we exchange cards, and we talk. And as it's all about really caring about that person, but being focused enough on the conversation that you're making eye contact, and that, those things. But, I'm even in my mind, I'm thinking about their name. I'm thinking about some key things that they're telling me. And so, a little bit later, I may go to the restroom and stand in the stall and pull out the 5 or 6 cards I got over the last hour and actually write some of those details down on the back. And so that way, when I follow up with them the next week, the next day or whatever, I can actually mention something personal that they mentioned to me, and that makes a big difference. So either that, and I'm doing better at remembering those things now, as opposed to, having to actually write those details down. But, those things make a big difference, just that you went a little mile, or, a little extra step there, just to remember something specific about them. But now, even in my hotel room, if I'm at a conference that night, I'll lay the cards out and I'll take a photo and I send it to my VA. And so that way, the next day or a couple of days, I know they're in my CRM. And so, then I can reach out to each one of those people and I can make my notes about them, what I remember, and I can follow up specifically with that person or even as a group, so I can follow up specifically. I can say, hey, John, it was great to meet you at such and such event. Whatever we talked about, I'll try to mention something, whether it's he mentioned that his kids are important to him, or this about real estate, or a specific deal, or maybe even some way. I'll ask sometimes, how can I add value to you? How can I help you? And believe it or not, people don't ask that. And I've had people say, well, oh, let me think about that, because nobody's ever really asked that before, So even things like that will stand out. But guess what? When they tell you some way, be sure and follow up. Be sure and follow up with that person.
Yeah.
But then later, let's say that event comes back up, the next year, right? Well, I've got all those people tagged. So now I'll just, in a mass email even, I can say, hey, met you here at this event last year. Are you going to be there this year? And I can do that in just a minute now.
Love it. Awesome.
Because they're already in my system.
Yeah, in your database. And so what CRM do you use to keep track of all that stuff?
I use Contactually.
Okay. Got it. Cool. Yeah, and
there's
we're
so many.
Yeah, no, there's so many. We use Zoho CRM, which is like a sales CRM, because we do have a sales business, but we actually use it to keep track of all the projects we have going on. Unlike a large syndicator, you probably have 2 or 3 or 4 deals, but we have like 40 rehabs under, so it's very difficult to keep track of. That's for sure.
Yes. Yes.
And then, so how often are you following up with those people? I know for me, for some people it's 2 weeks. For realtors, it's every month. How often were you following up with those leads?
Yeah, and probably not often enough, honestly, especially initially, because I didn't have. So, I had a way of getting them into my system, and initially it was me trying to use an app on my phone, taking a picture, and that was a disaster. And so, ended up, it was much easier to have my assistant put them all in, even if she had to type them in manually. She could do it faster than me taking a photo and then trying to make sure it's all correct and all that. That was a mess, right?
Yeah.
But so initially I didn't follow up enough. I'd have that one call or that one email, but if they didn't follow up or if they didn't schedule a call, I didn't really have a good way of tracking that.
Yeah.
I didn't have any way of knowing without me physically going in. But after you go to a bunch of these conferences and now you got a few hundred people in your database, it's pretty time consuming if you're going to go through each one, right?
Yeah.
However, you want to start categorizing some of these people. Are they going to be an investor, or are they somebody that's just learning the business that's brand new, or are they, like where are they at, in their system? And sometimes you don't know, right? But it's all in the follow-up and finding out. And so now we were trying to do now a weekly newsletter. Okay. And I've kind of gotten away from that because I don't want to, when I send somebody an email, I want them to, one, to open it. Right. Uh-huh. Or at least not delete it right away. But I don't want them to get it so often that it's just like, no, I've seen it so often.
Yeah. And I think that it goes back because we do 2 email blasts a week now to our whole list. And one of them is a property that we'll have. Again, ours is a little bit different, right? So you're not going to have a property every single week, but to coincide with every new property, we also on Tuesdays will do like add value to that list, right? To keep them more engaged. So it can be, a video of you talking about something, or an article you just wrote, or an article about a city that you guys are investing in. So we do that every Tuesday. And then every Thursday, it's about, here's a deal that you should buy or invest in or whatever. So we've just seen a lot of success. And the more that you do it, we've seen more open rates and people. Yeah, you're going to have some people unsubscribe, but I'd rather have people unsubscribe than stay on there and kind of just keep deleting the emails. So we found that to be successful.
That's true. And I've heard like both extremes, and two, if somebody does unsubscribe that easy, they're probably not going to invest in your deal or buy one of your properties anyway.
Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, I completely understand that standpoint as well. And we've gone back and forth about it. We've kind of gone to bi-weekly now. Unless we have an opportunity, then that's separate from that newsletter. If we have an investment opportunity, and then in our business here, I can't send that to everybody, but those investors that I've already met or talked to and have that relationship with. And so they're getting those emails, outside of that newsletter.
Got it. Okay, cool. And then any other ways that you found to grow that list, to grow that lead list for investors? I'm looking to do a syndication later this year or next year. So How are some other ways that you've found have been good instead of going to the conferences to grow an investor list?
The podcast, doing
Yeah.
it. I'm doing a daily podcast about syndication, and so that's helped a lot, to
Yeah,
grow a list. As far as a newsletter list, and then
exactly.
it takes more. So that helps me get people to the website, obviously. Then they learn a little about me, and then they can actually sign up, as a potential investor. However, it doesn't put them on my investor list, just so I'm
Yeah.
clear.
Yeah.
It does not put them on my investor list, but it does send me an email where I'll send them a personal email, and then I'll follow up with a phone call. So they get a link just like before where they can schedule a call with me.
Yeah.
But if they don't, they get a call from me, and within a week. And so hopefully I'm following up with them, and I will continue to follow up. They signed up. And so I'm going to keep following up, with them until I get to talk to them. And if they're accredited or not, I'm going to know which way to put them in my list as far as what emails I can send them.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, because that's for the SEC guidelines,
Right.
correct? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But podcast has been good, to grow that list. But outside of that, it's been traveling to meetups and large events, and really, if it's at a big hotel, it's standing out in the lobby the entire event, meeting as many people as possible, as opposed to sitting inside the event.
Wow. Yeah, because I just went to an event in Seattle last weekend. We went there for networking, and we ended up sitting in the thing 80% of the time. And then we left with 3 business cards. We're like, what the hell? These huge events are not worth the time. So, yeah, I mean, it was really, you have to play it right. And you have to go with the right mentality, too. So, And again, so when you are networking at those events, what is you'll just approach people and tell them what you do and ask them what they do and just start building that relationship? Or what are some tips when you're networking that you think people do incorrectly?
People talk about themselves too much. If somebody's asking, I'm going to tell them. I want to answer their questions. I want to tell them enough that they remember who I am.
Yeah.
Right. However, I don't want to flood the entire conversation. So, people think really highly of other people that just listen. They don't know that's what it is. But, when you just get to talk about yourself, all of a sudden, you walk away from there thinking, oh, I really like that guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. He seemed like a nice guy, but he only said 3 words.
Yeah.
So listen, right? But intently listen. So when they say something, follow up with a unique question.
Yeah.
Kind of like doing a podcast interview, right? Follow up with a unique question to show you're actually listening.
Yeah.
And so you're having an actual conversation, that you're not just, doing the shotgun approach with your business cards, like you mentioned earlier.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Yeah. So some big mistakes there. It's just, having people not having a long-term thought here. And actually they're judging a book by its cover. And I learned the hard way you can't do that. They're assuming, well, that person doesn't look like somebody that's an investor. Or that person doesn't look like somebody that's going to buy my house or whatever.
Unaccredited. Yeah.
That's right. And it's so far from the truth. You just have, you have no idea who this person is that you're fixing to talk to.
Yep. No, I completely agree. All right, cool. So how can people get in touch with you if they want to learn more about your business, about what you do, your podcast? Plug it away.
Yeah. So, check us out. We're the Real Estate Syndication Show. It's a daily podcast where I'm interviewing experts in the syndication business. And so whether you're a passive investor or whether you're looking to get in the syndication business and buy large commercial properties, you're going to hear experts on the show teaching you, how to do that, how to raise capital, how to get into the business, all their struggles. But go to lifebridgecapital.com. That's where you're going to connect with me. You can email me, Whitney at lifebridgecapital. You can even call or text me, 540-585-4338. And so there you go. So reach out to me. I'd love to connect with you and show you about our opportunities. And we have a big why. We have a big mission, of why we do what we do. And we'd love to share that with people.
Awesome. Well, first, then what is your guys' why, your company's why?
So we, my wife and I are in our 3rd adoption process. We're bringing our 3rd son home in about 3 weeks. And so, unfortunately, adoption, that process is like a roller coaster and costs anywhere from 40 to 60 grand. And so most people have no idea. Isn't it crazy, that there's 160 million orphans in the world, but it takes that much, to bring one home and to give them a home. So we're in our 3rd process now, and And that expense alone, obviously, is more than most people make.
Yeah.
And so, while they would be a great family, I tell them, well, it's going to cost this much, or, and they just say, Whitney, that's more than I'm making a year. We can't do that. And so, LifeBridge Capital, we're committing 50% of our profits to helping these families afford to adopt. And so we're committed to helping them. We know the struggles we went through and to bring our children home and are still doing it. We plan to keep adopting. It takes so long. We just plan to stay in the process. I tell people it's a roller coaster, but it's well worth it. It's well worth it. Your family's going to be so blessed through adoption.
Wow. That's incredible. Why does it cost so much then to do that whole process?
That's a good question, and there's not a great answer. However, there's a lot of legal things that you do have to go through. I mean, it's a lot of legal expenses, as you can imagine, and you want to make sure it's done legally.
Yeah.
Even more so than buying a house. So there's a lot of legal matters. However, there's adoption agencies. There's care for possibly a birth mother. There's care for the child, or the birth expenses. Or there's lots of expenses that go into it. Or if it's international, you're flying to another country possibly twice, or even having to stay in another country for many weeks.
Wow. And so is a lot of that expense then would be like the legal expense, and then I'm assuming you have to go through, if it's in the U.S., then you have to do a lot of the court proceedings and stuff like that.
So it depends. So if you're doing something locally, it could be court, a court proceeding. But if you're doing through another state or something like that, there's going to be lots of legal fees. But you're going to have a social worker is going to come to your house many times, do a home study, and they're going to make sure that you are like the best parents you can possibly imagine, that they can find out anyway, before they're going to deem you are a capable parent to adopt a child.
I had no idea. I thought you'd just show up at an adoption agency and,
pick one out.
Yeah. Jesus. Wow. Well, thanks so much for sharing that. I'm glad we put that in there too. That's incredible story, incredible mission, incredible why. And thanks so much for coming on the show.
And I'll throw out too, if anybody is looking to adopt or even thinking about it, like reach out to me. My wife and I schedule calls with couples all the time that, have said, we've thought about that. And I'll say, well, we'd love to answer any questions you have, just to help you through the process. So please let me know.
That's awesome. Thanks so much. Thanks so much for coming on. Talk to you soon.
Yeah. Thank you.